Hi guys, welcome back. My name's Hunter and this is Zach.
And this is our best guess.
So today we're going to be addressing some of the feedback that we've gotten from people who've watched our videos. We definitely appreciate you guys giving us that feedback. It helps us, make it better.
Exactly, yeah. We really do want you to just tell us whatever, even if it's just garbage.
Even if it's mean garbage.
Yeah, if it's just mean, whatever, doesn't add to anything. We just want you to interact with us.
Absolutely,
We want to know what you think.
We love hearing different opinions. Every time we get a new outside opinion, it makes us better people, better able to speak to each other.
Yeah, definitely.
One of those opinions was that we, in the last video, and this is just a quick to address an issue, sounded like we were against conservationism, something like preserving species.
Yeah.
Just to clarify, we weren't. We aren't. Neither of us are particularly against preserving species. No, I think that's a good thing. Of course it is. Especially against our own, destructive nature. That's a positive.
And sorry, just to touch on that. That's going to be the topic of this video. Is we're going to be talking about why we talk about things a certain way. Specifically, hyperbole. We use a lot of... I specifically use a lot of hyperbole, yeah.
Violent hyperbole.
It
is violent.
Yeah, and...
It can be, destructive imagery.
And so we are going to get into that, but just to, add something a little bit new as well. While we are filming, we're going to be drinking La
Cumbre.
And
local New Mexico. It's an elevated IPA, is what it's called.
It's pretty good. We've had it before, but what we're going to do is we're going to drink it throughout the thing, and then at the end of it, we're just going to give a quick take just to wrap things up, and it'll hopefully
be a shtick.
Be a little shtick thing,
Yeah, why not? I figured we'd add a little extra dimension to it. And if you guys are drinking at home, or if you can't, either way, cheers. All right, so hyperbole. I'd like to talk about why hyperbole is important in the first place. Because we use a lot of hyperbole to express our ideas, and mostly to highlight issues that happen when we speak about different things, different topics.
Right. I think the first point I'll make on hyperbole and why it's good, why it's necessary, really, is a lot of the times it can be funny. We're trying to be funny. We're trying to make it more exaggerated, more, so it stands out and you hear it.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's a good way to drive a point home without having to lecture overtly, which we do anyway, but that's not the point.
Give and take.
I do specifically. I lecture quite often.
I use a lot of hyperbole just because, personally, like I said, I think it's funny and it's fun. It is for me. It's more enjoyable to just really kind of put a little gas on the fire whenever I'm talking about anything.
A little gas on the fire.
Yeah.
Like babies in cars.
Yeah.
Give it a little extra consequence.
Yeah, and it really, I think it holds people's attention more, and specifically, something I've noticed is I have a couple different types of friends. I have the friends that are more in the college area, like they go to college, they go to school, they do whatever, and it's hit or miss. Sometimes they like the hyperbole, sometimes they don't, and I think that's a pretty interesting dynamic with conversation. Yeah. Because with me and you, we work. So a lot of the times that we're discussing these topics of what we're going to talk about, or even just when we're discussing these topics on our own, we don't have time to...
Yeah, there's no study time. There's no extra amount of effort that we can go through, or nobody to teach us, rather, specifically.
Right.
About most of the subjects. We have to learn it on our own.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to use the word on the fly, but according to our own interest and time. So a lot of this stuff is
a little on the fly. Maybe
I think on the fly is more just pressure oriented. Mm-hmm. It's not a pressure to learn these things necessarily. It's just a drive and interest.
Right. And I've actually heard this. I don't remember where I've heard this, but being able to reduce something to like a joke, or to being able to reduce it to that simple idea, even if it's hyperbolic, exaggerated, it helps you understand it.
Of course, yeah. No, comedy is a great way to express ideas without having, that very serious like dread or very serious,
That's
anxiety
that's
about it.
another
That's
thing
the word
is
I was looking for.
some of these topics that we talk about. There is a sense
they're
of
dreadful
dread.
in a way.
Some of them are just kind of heavy topics, and that comedy, that little like exaggeration, helps take the weight off of it and make it more digestible just to talk about.
Yes, yeah, definitely, and you'll see it in actual comedians as well. As they'll approach huge subjects very,
Nonchalantly.
yeah, very nonchalantly. They approach them with as a joke, and then you get to think about that joke and why it's funny, and then the thought process moves forward with that idea without having to just drop it on somebody. Like 9/11 is very serious. Like, yeah, no, I know that. Thank you.
Right. You're right. Exactly. uh, um, that whole like just dropping stuff on someone too, because with a lot of these topics, nihilism, environmentalism, that whole like the dread associated with that.
The world ending.
It is dropped on people.
Absolutely.
And when you're able to joke about it, what it does is
it takes away the power from that idea as much. It
really,
not
and,
power,
well,
but
maybe a
the
better way
fear,
to
I
like
guess.
look at it, is the way we talk about things culturally now is very charged. Everyone
That's true,
is
yeah.
like, if you don't agree with me, you're against me, or you're this
yeah,
or that.
it's socially violent in a way.
Right.
It has such a big importance on everything that it gets lost, in translation, because it's an important topic, but is it the important topic? Is it so paramount that we have to address it right now?
Right. Maybe, and
maybe, but that's the problem is.
And when you make that joke, if it is that thing that needs to be addressed right now, I've also heard that like comedy and tragedy are kind of like two sides of the same coin.
Oh, yeah.
But it also like, instead of it being that violent like reactive nature to a subject, it allows you to humanize the sides of the argument. It lets you see the sides.
Personalize it in
right,
a way. Like,
exactly.
Internalize it, I guess, is the right word for that.
Mm-hmm.
Without, again, having to go through the whole subject. Like, little pieces of comedy help you internalize and, conceptualize, grasp the concept, rather.
And with that, like, comedic approach to it, I'll go back to, my college friends. When they approach topics in this very serious, very like very dry way, and we can be dry sometimes, but
we have extremely dry humor. Right. Half the time, our jokes are probably just sounding like we're just talking.
We're just talking, yeah. We're just like saying something fucked up for the
sake of it, yeah.
But with that sort of dry, just meticulous approach, it can be useful, especially like in an academic sense. But if you're not in that, like we said, we're part of the working class. We don't have the time to sit there and peer review what we say, or look at. Right,
it's all based on personal information, things we've gleaned, things we've learned on our own. We're not a part of academia,
right? And
we don't claim to be, not even close.
Right? No, we don't claim to be part of that. We do
value intellect, of course.
Yeah, we value intellect, we value knowledge, and we do think that our opinions hold some weight in a sense. That's why we're doing the show.
Right, of course.
We wouldn't do it if we didn't think we had anything to say.
No. Well, we probably would, but it would just be stupid jokes.
It would be stupid, right? It would just like have no direction or like purpose or anything. But because we do think that it is, especially these topics are important to talk about, we do want to talk about them. And that's something, again, with that sort of like academic view of how you should talk about things. I don't...
Right, the hyper analysis and the hyper, educative point of view isn't always the most personal thing. I would rather talk about a subject personally, and I know you feel the same way. Like you would rather one-on-one or as intimately as possible.
Right, and that's how most people engage with ideas, is with that intimacy. But what sucks about the academic view of things is there is a certain point in which that argument, like the academic argument, will minimize the other argument, the more personal argument that people can make.
The academic will, put down the other argument.
Right, because it's like, oh, you spelled this word wrong.
Right.
Therefore, your opinion is invalid.
Yeah, there's no reflection between knowledge and spelling or how you speak. It shouldn't.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's hyper reflective of what you know. For example. No, I actually no, not for example. I think that is a great example, is the way that we speak online. Is if somebody misspells a word, it immediately invalidates their argument regardless of the points that are made.
Right.
And it's the very worst kind of fallacy where you're attacking the subject matter instead of, or I'm sorry, you're not addressing the subject matter instead of,
The I don't know if this is a term or anything, but the way I like to think of it is intellectual authority. People like to make the argument that, oh, I said this better than you, I said this smarter than you.
Right.
Therefore, it's right. It's just right because I'm smarter.
No, I agree with that, and I think it's a wrong way to go about communication overall. Like it isn't, just because you're eloquent doesn't mean that you are mostly right or more right than the person standing across from you who may have never gone to even high school. Like that
Right.
Eloquence doesn't speak to knowledge. It doesn't speak to even good ideas. I mean, it's appreciated obviously when good ideas are presented eloquently, but
right.
It's not paramount to the ideas themselves.
Right. And that's really important. Is there's that sort of like the useful knowledge, like the knowledge that we can actually use and
practical.
A sort of like utilitarian knowledge that you can actually use the knowledge and it works for what it needs to work as. But using that intellectual authority, it has the tendency to not work when it's put into practice. It like sounds good and it's very eloquent, like people can make different points. But then when you try to, apply it into something that works or something that people can understand,
a real world scenario,
right? Like you said, maybe someone who didn't go to high school, trying to get them to understand.
Right. It's poorly communicative, is what it is. Zach and I usually we speak very well compared to our peers. I'm not going to say we're the most eloquent people on the block, but,
Definitely not.
Compared to our general peers, the people we're around, we speak fairly well. And usually cohesively, which is another issue that we tend to run into, is people just, lose cohesion in some...
Yeah.
While talking. It's very strange, and it's very jarring.
I'm going to bring up that intellectual authority again. Like an area where that cohesion leaves, especially for me, is when... the argument is, oh, well, this smart person says this, so obviously that's the best choice to go with, right?
Right, and arguing authority.
Right, and then you say, well, I mean, think about this, and this, and this, how they work together. And they say, well, no, this person said it, so, obviously...
Right, no,
that's correct.
At least a blind belief. It's not a healthy way to observe or... participate in your world is blind belief in anybody, no matter their authority. You should always question ideas. You should always question concepts. You should bring them to the table in your mind at least, and break them down at least as best you can. And if you can't, talk to a peer. Find somebody who can address those things.
And so me and Alexis, we had a conversation on feminism, and for me and you, we will sit there and we'll argue with each other, or maybe not argue, but debate
back and forth,
certain ideas, and we're a lot more practiced in it, so we can go back and forth, have a certain edge on each argument or whatever.
Right.
But she's she's smart, but she's not like us to where she debates everything every couple of minutes or whatever. So when me and her are talking, if she's trying to make a point, but she's not really like wording it properly, I'm not gonna shit on her. Like, I'm not gonna say, you didn't word that properly, or you didn't do that properly.
You don't attack her because she doesn't have the practice of trying to defend herself verbally. About any topic. That's a skill. It's a learned habit, is what it is.
Right.
And it's perfectly okay. And I appreciate when people say, "Hey, I don't know this. I need to come back to this argument. Like, I'll get back to you. I need to think about this." I think that is a way healthier approach than just assuming, well, you don't know what you're talking about.
I think so too, and that I think with the hyperbole is there's a lot of people who will say something very hyperbolic, something very like hyperbolic, and their first thought is, well, that's not true, that's not whatever, and then
they take it
very literally instead of just asking, like even just saying like, well, what do you mean by that? Like, you do that a lot. You say, like, okay, what do you mean by what you just, that crazy thing you just said? And then when I'm like, okay, well, now that you're asking me, I can get
that's
deeper into the topic.
Yeah, that's how you approach subjects without having to go up to somebody and say, hey, would you like to talk about this very intensely detailed thing that I'm going to talk about for a while?
Like, yeah, exactly. It's also very sensitive, and
you might get offended.
if you get uncomfortable with this conversation,
you're in it now. But I think overall, communication is really the crux of the issue when you talk about people taking hyperbole too literally, because when you take hyperbole too literally, or you appeal to the higher authority, it's a problem with what they understand as communication. They're saying, I don't know how to communicate this idea. Someone already did it for me, so I'm going to trust their communication without, internalizing the concept and, making it their own. And I disagree with that notion. That's
a really good point. And the reason that's a good point is because, like I said, when I say that we have something to say about these topics, when I say these topics, I mean these very, like, environment, like religion, like
we talk
politics. We talk about a lot of different things. The reason those are so important is because there's issues with them. There are real life consequences to all of these topics that we talk about.
And a lot of people they have skin in the teeth. They have skin in the game without recognizing that they have a stake in all these things.
So with the whole skin in the game thing, in reality, their skin in the game is their actual body, like their
lives.
Being, right? But when they talk to you about it, their skin in the game in their head is, oh, I gotta win this. When in reality, it shouldn't be, oh, I'm going to win this conversation. Yeah. I think we should be trying to win a better being.
I wonder when conversations about these things became competitive. Because I feel that too, that weird pressure where they're trying to like outsmart you and you just want to talk about something, or you're just listening to them address it. And they're even to the point of trying to convince you before they even know your opinion about what they think. Like that's semi-offensive at a point. Like, come on, calm down. We can have a conversation.
Yeah, and
you don't need a persuasive piece to just talk. Like
so I think with that whole, like, they're trying to win, it goes back to that intellectual authority. They think if they can prove that they have that authority and they have that, like, intellectual power or whatnot, then all that needs to happen for things to get better is just for you to say, oh, you're absolutely right. If I just think exactly like you think, then we'd be there. We'd have the problem. We'd have the problem solved.
They want you to default to their side. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Instead of actually dealing with these problems as problems.
Exactly, and I think a lot of it has to do with criticism specifically. Like, for example, when people can't speak on, like, we were saying earlier, nobody can break down, or if you can break down a subject into a comedy or into a joke, you understand it better. I think a lot of it is people can't take criticism for their opinions, so they don't have that critical thinking, and thus they can't make light of it. They take it very seriously. They put it
Mm-hmm.
in the little box inside their head that says, this is the serious stuff. We can't joke about this stuff.
Right.
And
Yeah, that's a good point. Like, what's that called? Like the sacred? Like it's or
Yeah.
is that the sacred?
I don't know if it's the sacred. I don't think I'm familiar with that concept. Well, I mean, other than the literal words, the sacred.
Right. Yeah, and even on those more important topics, like the stuff that we can't joke about or whatever, we should joke about it because
I mean, yeah, to a degree, I agree with that. Yeah, of course, we shouldn't make fun of it. There's a difference.
Right. There's
You
a difference.
you shouldn't use comedy to attack.
Yeah.
That's never a healthy way of using comedy, and
Right.
I truly believe that there's a difference between making fun of something and then attacking it with humor, and that's a toxic way to be. That doesn't mean you understand the concept. That means you are afraid of the concept, generally speaking.
Right. And it's reductive to like we said, these are problems that can be solved. There's a process, and the process is talking about it and getting the solution to it. So,
which is why oftentimes our conversations break down into smaller and smaller pieces,
into
and they
smaller,
keep
yeah.
going. We have rolling conversations
Yeah.
as it is. Too many.
I think this is a good point to kind of pivot into philosophies on, because when I say problems and like them being solved and whatever, it's problems in context to our existence, really. Like, because if the problem isn't within,
You mean like existential problems?
yeah,
Yeah?
and
Like
so,
existential problems?
So that's what we're gonna pivot into is nihilism more. We talk about nihilism all the time.
We've talked about nihilism,
Yeah.
but now I want to branch into both absurdism and existentialism, being sort of the sisters of that section of nihilism as it is.
Right.
Because they are branches. They're smaller pieces of nihilism.
Let's go back to the nihilist argument of we are just here, we exist. There's not really a purpose.
There's no designated purpose.
There's no designated purpose. There's no inherent meaning in existence. It's just that we exist, and that's a pretty valid
It's a
argument.
hefty thing to wrap your brain around.
It really is, and I think the best way for people to kind of understand it is evolution, and just how we went from
It's an interesting scope on that, or perspective on that. Okay.
It's the easiest to like it's the easiest buy-in, I guess, for nihilism is evolution, which is we were monkeys. Well, so we're us now. And you just rewind it, and then you go back to the time when we were chimps.
Primates.
Yeah.
We weren't chimpanzees directly. We got to stop saying that. It's so derogatory of evolution to say like we were chimps. That's not. We were primates. We weren't chimpanzees.
We were.
Chimpanzees are a parallel
right.
evolution to us.
Right, But, go further and further back to the point where we were single-celled organisms.
Right,
and
there's a chain.
There's a chain, there's a timeline, and it gets there eventually.
Without meaning, purpose, or direction. It's
right.
Random.
Right.
And
now,
entropic is the word I would normally use.
Now,
it's entropy.
Whenever I talk about, like, being religious or whatever, it's mostly...
Most of the time.
I think it's interesting the fact that, life and consciousness exists in the first place. Other than that, like, I can't really get much deeper into it. Like, that's it. Like, I just think it's very, very lucky,
Yeah, it's incredibly lucky. It's astronomically lucky. But, again, is it really lucky? It's entropy. It was going to happen. We're here. So it's a 1 of a billion shot, but we're already in the 1 of a billion.
Right,
like,
we're
it was
already,
going to happen. It's still a 1 in a billion. Like, it's going to happen. Especially in the infinite universe. 1 in a billion is actually really huge.
Right. So, well, in the terms of like infinite, the fact that infinite exists.
We can't get in this.
We're not going to get into infinite.
No, I'm sorry, guys. Maybe that's a different discussion later.
That's definitely its own video on itself on infinite.
We've had too many arguments about the infinite.
Yeah, but
let's bring it back to philosophies. Nihilism specifically is just the acceptance that existence just exists. There's no meaning, there's no context, there's no divine right. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, and
so now I think we should branch into absurdism. We know and we have addressed in the past what nihilism is. So absurdism, do you want me to give the literal definition first?
Yeah, you can give the literal definition.
Okay, so the literal definition of absurdism is that there is no meaning to life, and it's funny, in a way, that humans are looking for that. Equally, it's important that humans are looking for that because it makes life have meaning.
I'll expand on that a little. Like I'll specify that a little bit more. Is the way I kind of look at it is because so first the existence and universe that we live in.
We should point out that this is a fully fleshed out philosophy.
Right.
It's not. We're not just. It's not like a small thing. It's a
research.
Definitely, we're simplifying to the point of probably derivation at this point.
Yeah, and that's kind of the point of these conversation is. We're already expecting you bought into the conversation with all the rest of the
you're
stuff.
26 minutes in. You're
here
for a reason.
So, with the absurdism, it's based on the belief that we live in a very chaotic, infinitely chaotic universe.
Yes. It's
meaningless, and because of that chaoticness, or the entropy of it, that meaninglessness is funny that like you said, it's funny that we try to chase after that meaning, because ultimately, no matter how much we try to get meaning out of something, if you look at it from outside of your own perspective, we're monkeys on a rock that are like
floating through space at a million miles an hour.
And then us saying like, oh, I have this piece of paper that says I'm smarter than you, so therefore I now can have a bigger house than you.
I make our more made up currency.
Yeah, exactly. So I like the absurdist argument because when you look at it outside of human perspective of these meaning, these like power structures that we've developed for ourselves for like meaning,
which removing them from context completely makes them useless and wild.
That's where the term absurd comes from. It's like it's absurd for like when you see absurd comedy like
the
maybe like in Rick and Morty with
Rick and Morty's very absurdist. Yeah.
Right. So that's where that term like absurd comes from. It's just
crazy. It's outlandish. But realistically, all the things we do are outlandish. We're talking to a magic eyeball that can record and send it to everyone on the planet.
Exactly. We're talking to all of you. We don't know who
in the
you
past.
are. Yeah, like when you hear this, it's already gonna be a couple of weeks after we've recorded.
Oh yeah.
So it's very it's interesting.
It's funny. It's a good way to look and analyze things. Honestly, if you get really stuck on something, look at it from an outside perspective. Like, okay, what is this? This is, like the law system. The law system is one of the most hilarious things if you look at it from a backwards perspective. Like, we made these invisible rules about the invisible structures for the things that we've randomly made just to make sure that we don't murder each other in the streets. And if you do murder each other in the streets, there's consequences. Like, even though we're just animals living on a rock. Right, exactly. Like, that's crazy. Yeah. That's like Snake Planet.
Yeah, it's very strange. And then what we're also going to talk about is existentialism. Right. So that's more like
I'm going to give them the definition of this as well. Give them the definition of existentialism is that we assign meaning to life. There is no meaning, but we assign it by being alive, and we choose that meaning ourselves. there is no necessarily end goal to existentialism or absurdism, but specifically existentialism is that we give meaning to life without there being an end.
And I think they go very hand in hand, because
they're very close to each other.
With that sort of like
They often get confused.
you put meaning into existence. It's really important that we do that, because, you know, taking the absurdist argument of things being absurd, if these like absurd rules and systems that we have in place aren't, you know, utilitarian in nature, like they aren't,
if they're not serving us,
if they're not serving us for our existence, for either, you know, comfort, happiness, whatever, then it is important for us to talk about it. It's important for us to reevaluate,
take a step back and be able to look at it and say, this is broke, we don't need it no more.
Right, exactly. And for myself,
cat again, sorry.
That's, she's not causing problems. For me, one of the more valuable things of existence that I think, well, first, the most valuable thing of existence is experience, is the fact that we are able to experience existence.
Experience person. I rarely say no to new experiences. I truly believe that everyone should try everything once. Like, yeah, there are limitations, of course. I'm not suicidally going out and trying things, but
right.
You know,
but
to
whenever
the extent
someone
where,
like invites you out and you say no, I think I'd rather stay home and do the same routine of playing video games, jerking off, and like going to sleep, and then waking up and doing the same thing over again. It's like, if you're invited out by someone else, like another person in this existence, which is very strange. Like it's
a weird thing to do, but you know, it's our existence. But no, I agree. I think say yes every time, and you know what? I get that there are people, obviously, who get stressed out by leaving introverts, extremely introverted people and whatnot, but it's all about the experience. It's what you can carve out of this meaningless existence just to make yourself happy. That's really what it's about. Right. And I can understand why people hesitate to break away from routine, break away from their...
It's scary.
Yeah, of course it's scary. I mean, anything could happen, and you get comfortable that way. You stop thinking about what you're doing because it becomes a routine.
I think that's, you know, absurd.
I think that's terrifying.
I think it's terrifying because when you have those like invisible like I feel like it's invisible
self-made barriers.
Yeah, like an invisible cage. You're starting to think in your head like, I can protect myself from this outside chaos. You know, I can just stay in my little bubble. Nothing bad will ever happen. I can just keep doing the same thing.
Right, but people forget their bubble's being carried by every other bubble. By
everything else, exactly. So I think it's important to take yourself out of that and to really be engaged with that sort of like primal reality of the fact.
I like that primal reality.
The fact that like we exist, like
and some like, shit right there.
Yeah.
No, I agree. I think people need to engage better with their surroundings, with the world, with the way that they perceive the world and the way that they perceive others. Mm-hmm. Like it's important, and if it's important to explore your thoughts on those things, because at any given time your bubble could pop.
And that's exactly it. Is there with that like sort of primal reality there. You put yourself in this invisible cage to hopefully protect it from whatever, but there is no protecting it. And that's the scariest thing about the fact that we exist is it's not guaranteed.
We've built these fragile structures on fragile structures, and everything we have is just ready to topple. And it's important that everybody participate in those structures. Mm-hmm. Because we don't want them to topple. Well, most of us don't want them to topple. Some anarchists might.
Like I said, I'm in it for the experience.
Exactly.
I want the fun.
The fun. The toppling of all civilization. The fun.
It's outdated.
But yeah, it is. It's all about the experience. It's all about what you can find in this life that makes you happy. And you would be surprised, I honestly think this, that what you can do when you explore outside of that bubble, when you are willing to make yourself uncomfortable for the sake of your own development, which is something that a lot of people don't have. It's not that they don't have that self-starting, I don't care, I'm diving into this head first.
Well, that uncomfortable feeling is, like you said earlier with the whole criticism thing, that that feeling of uncomfortability is it's uncomfortable. Like it's
It is, yeah.
And
it's not something you seek out or you normally seek out.
Right. And I think we have learned to just be so afraid of anything being uncomfortable that when it is,
we like violently aggress away from it. We just
right, exactly.
don't even want to touch it. No,
exactly.
I think that's universally true for most people, even for people who are willing to explore things, who are willing to get out of their comfort zone just to feel or explore experience.
For my experience with like uncomfortable things is, I don't know if I've talked about it on here before, but I think I've talked about it on the other show, Mud Pit, and there was a point in my life where I was very into psychedelic drugs, and
no one could tell.
So for that, it was very eye opening for me, because before that I was super anti-drug. Just say no. Like,
would you say it was third eye opening to you?
Sorry,
I can't help the dad jokes.
Yeah,
it had to come out. I was gonna think about it
for like an annoying hippie who like that was my only personality trait. Then yeah, it was third eye opening.
Right.
And what I found out with a lot of that stuff is there is a feeling of uncomfortability of that, like, when you realize that there is no cage protecting you from anything.
Oh yeah.
That you really are not.
It's all open skies, bud.
Right. Exactly. It is scary, and it is that's something I've had before. Is like bad trips as well. Is where I realize there's no cage, and that's a very frightening thought, especially on psychedelic drugs when you're having a bad trip.
I couldn't imagine why that would amplify that fear.
Right, exactly. And but I've also found that if you kind of just accept that fear or that uncomfortable feeling and just kind of take it,
internalize it, and address it, and then you can move forward. And that's
that moving forward part it's a really weird feeling. It's a different feeling than. I don't know. I think people should experience that sort of, because when you're able to overcome that fear and that uncomfortability, it's...
Oh, that's a dopamine rush like nobody's business. It gives you the good feels. You're like, oh, I can do this. I did it.
Yeah.
I'm there. Oh, here we go. She hates closed doors. Yeah. She just wants out so she can come back in, just to know she has the power to do it.
Mm-hmm.
See? She's experiencing new things. It's great. No, I think everybody should go through that feeling. Everybody should be able, or at least willing, to try to expand their intellectual and experience horizons. That's important.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people don't really want to do that. They want to go to work every day and come home and drink wine in front of the TV and go to bed. And
even with that, so I'm actually going to go back to the intellectual authority versus intellectual or like utilitarian intellect. Is there's that absurdist view of intellectual authority where you're going to school, you're getting these papers, like you're able to get this paper that says, I am smart.
I am better than you.
I get a bigger house than you. And that's it. Like, so when we're thinking about, that is utilitarian in a sense, where you get that bigger house, you get the whatever.
I mean, it's societally utilitarian to a degree, where they do have, fundamental knowledge that most people don't. But on the same token, we can't live without construction workers.
Exactly. Like, so then I'll go to I'll pivot towards the utilitarian intellect. Is when we're thinking about that existence and reality as it is, that when it becomes utilitarian intellect is you're able to take pieces of that reality or pieces of whatever and you're able to use it so with construction workers, they're able to build things. They're able to use tools. They're able to manipulate whatever. They're like mechanics is a good example of this too.
Right.
Those people with the intellectual authority, it's utilitarian in the sense that they have the power to make people with actual utilitarian knowledge do things for them, like build them a BMW, like have a car. And
right.
then they have a nice car, which that allows them to interact with reality in a certain way. But I think it's much more valuable to be able to build that car than it is to be able to buy that car.
Agreed. To a certain point, I agree with that. There is a certain knowledge schema that we have built up where we value things overly much. Like we've for a counter example, doctors and surgeons, yeah, we should value them. As a different example, English majors. I'm kidding.
Well, no, like
to a degree, yes, but
it's interesting that you see a lot of people. They get degrees in history,
English, liberal arts,
whatever, and the whole thing is the only job they can get is as an English teacher or as a history teacher.
You teach all of your replacements all at once.
Right, exactly. And then there's a lot of
but here's the thing, and this is I think where the more absurd part comes, is that even though they are applying for jobs that aren't in that field, in that degree they've gotten, they're still going to get paid more because they have a bachelor's.
Right.
Or a piece of paper,
right.
Whatever we're saying, master's.
Well, now what I think is,
I think that's funny. I think that's societally incorrect.
Something that's kind of more towards my point now of those not being important is you see all these people going to college and they're getting those English majors. They're getting
actually there's less people going to college.
Well,
there's a lot less people going to college.
There's a lot less people now, but especially like when I was in school, I was always told like go to college, like do this, like. And most of my friends went to college. Whether they finished it or not, they still went. They still got into, debt. And even if they had graduated, people who graduate are starting to not make as much money.
And they're wildly in debt. Like, to the point where it's detrimental to them actually moving on with life.
Right, exactly. And that's like just a prime example of that intellectual authority. Like that authority doesn't really work. No, and
authoritarian ideals rarely work.
Right, like you're not gonna gain power by just saying like, oh, I'm better, because that really is a superiority argument. Any authority is
again, I see the value in having secular knowledge about a subject and being able to apply that to further humanity. But
so I guess maybe where I should make a distinction is there's utilitarian authority where, like, let's say someone's they're choking or they're having a heart attack on a train, and there's a doctor there.
Right, like, you want the doctor.
You want the doctor because he has knowledge that is specifically able to make the situation better. That's actual authority where I believe he deserves the power in that situation.
Right, agreed.
But if maybe someone is like, hey, I need help, fixing this train. There's a bomb on this train that we need to defuse. And the doctor's like, well, I'm a doctor. Like, who cares? And right now, it doesn't, we need less people trying to be the doctor.
Grasp the power.
They're trying to grasp the power. They're trying to be the doctor. Or they're not necessarily... obviously, doctors are helpful, but I'll just make a metaphor. They're trying to be the doctor, and they're hoping that they'll be the doctor on that train in that very specific moment where they get that authority. But in reality, there's not that many moments like that where you actually truly have that authority.
Okay. I think I grasped that metaphor. Hopefully.
Rewind it. Think about it again.
Yeah, I'll have to ruminate on that one for a little while.
If you need questions, if you have questions, if you need to talk to us, just shit it out. Just
throw it out on the internet somewhere, preferably in our comment section. If you actually
Somewhere
have
we
questions
should read
about
it,
someone
yeah.
else, throw that there too.
Yeah, and we'll answer them.
Absolutely.
If you have questions about your dad, we'll answer it too.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know where he was on Tuesday night. Sorry, he's never coming back. Anyway, all right. I think.
Well, before we go, let's like
We're supposed to do this.
Yeah, it is a little strict just to end on a high note.
It's depressing.
That's okay. It's
anyway,
elevated.
I love Elevated. I think it's one of the best beers. It's definitely in my top 5, if not top 3 beers personally. But I love IPAs. You're not a huge IPA fan, no?
I like them. They're very like. So how would you describe the taste? Like what?
It's actually a really smooth IPA. Most IPAs have a really bitter taste, or people describe it as grass to me a lot, like very
It does taste a little bit like wheatgrass.
Right.
That's what I think of.
A lot of people describe that, and it's definitely not as punchy as most IPAs are. That doesn't hit the back of your throat with that like huge wave of
right. I don't feel it in my throat.
Hoppiness.
I feel it in my tongue. Like it ends like right at the end of the tongue, and then I don't. Going down, it's fine.
Oh yeah, it doesn't have that. It doesn't. It definitely has less carbonation than most IPAs do. I've noticed. I don't know why. Maybe it's just the way that they process it. I assume, but it's much smoother than most IPAs. I enjoy it. Not sure what we're gonna be drinking next time, but
probably another
something random.
Something random, yeah.
All right.
Or if you, so that's another thing. If you have any
yeah.
suggestions on what we can drink next, what we can talk about next.
Please leave them in the comments. Shoot us. We're trying to set up the Twitter and the Instagram to be more interactive. I believe we are going to start working on a sound-only platform soon-ish.
Yeah, SoundCloud.
Yeah. I do have all the audios parsed out, so hopefully we'll be able to give you some links in the description and whatnot. But for now, thank you guys for watching. If you liked what you heard and you want to leave us a comment, that would be great. Please like and subscribe. And, ring the bell. That's a thing, right?
Yeah, the notifications bell.
Ring the bell. We'll see you guys next time.
See you guys.